When Naruto got home from his eventful time with Uchiha Itachi, he found his mother present at the kitchen, his father as well. He had returned a bit late as he had spent more time than he had anticipated, throwing kunais and shurikens around with Itachi. That had been somewhat of a challenge. Though, nothing heavy was done to actually tire him out. It was a strange feeling seeing both his parents happily preparing the dinner in the kitchen. Naruto couldn't make what they were saying when he returned, but they seemed happy to be finally doing something like this once again. Although he didn't keep track of things, Naruto could agree that they haven't been doing things like these in months. The Kyuubi rampage had really changed so many things, not just for him, but for everyone living inside of the village hidden in leaves. Naruto, Kushina said happily. There was none of that nervousness that she usually displayed when facing him. Perhaps she was just happy to be in that kind of mood and space. When emotions ran high, other things tended not to matter. Emotions could be like a drug. Or so he was told by Azumi. Kushina smiled at her son. He was here. She had been worried that he wouldn't show up for dinner. Time had been ticking away, and it had been late already. But Minato had said they shouldn't worry. Perhaps what worried Kushina even more was Minato, his absence to the precise. But she was happy. She was glad that he had showed up as he promised. It would have been a disappointment and Naruto would have been shattered if something like that happened. It would have led to broken bonds, and the once happy relationship they were trying to rebuild would shatter and nothing would change. They would only be parents in name and nothing more. I'm so glad you made it, Kushina said happily. Minato nodded with a small smile, just beside his wife. I was beginning to worry, he said. Well, that hardly matters anyway. Come on and join us. Naruto smiled at his parents, waving his hands. I'd rather not. You know I have no skills when it comes to cooking, the redhead said. I'll just watch. You won't learn anything if you don't make the effort. Now come on and try it with us, Kushina said with a smile. We are here. You won't mess up the dinner. And even if we do mess it up, we will still eat it together. Like a family. There was the firmness in her tone. She was obviously not requesting him to join but telling him. That was the mother Naruto knew. His mother was a fierce woman who didn't show nervousness to a child. The mother he'd grown to know and love was one who was stubborn, strong-willed, and didn't back down so easily. She was persistent and somewhat forceful. Yet, even if this was the mother he'd grown to know, Naruto didn't feel happy. There was a strange feeling inside of him. It was truly strange. He wanted nothing more than to put a hand on his chest just to feel the rate of his heartbeat. He should have been happy that his parents had made the time and were putting on an effort for them to restart as a family like they once were. But Naruto wasn't all that happy. It was strange. Perhaps a part of him had expected his father to be caught up in the office doing his work as the Yondaime Hokage. It was also possible that deep inside of him, he really didn't want things to go back to the way they were. If they did, he would lose the desire that has led him into what he was today. Even with all those thoughts, Naruto smiled at his parents. Sure, why not? Minato waited until he got his hands wet before starting with the casual talk. So, how was your day? Yes, that kind of casual talk. The strange feeling didn't go away. It was still lingering in his thoughts and at the tip of his tongue. He didn't want to be responding to such questions. Perhaps he would have been happy to respond to such questions months ago, but he had grown. He wasn't that spoiled brat he had been back then. Well, perhaps he was still a little spoiled, but this wasn't the sort of talk he wanted to have. Either way, the two were here. His parents had made the effort to change things. That was something to smile about. It was a good change. He didn't want to end up resenting his parents. He doubted things would have come to that point though. Swallowing his thoughts, Naruto just smiled and responded to his father. It was interesting, he said. That is good, Minato said. Meet anyone new? I wouldn't say new, but I did end up meeting with Uchiha Itachi. Interesting person, Naruto said. The last words had been said to himself more than to anyone. Uchiha Itachi, huh? Minato was rather subdued about it. He seemed to be pondering about something. His mother didn't have thoughts Minato was having. She seemed happy about it. Excited even. Mikoto's older son, Kushina, said happily. This is a good thing. I hope you strike a friendship with him. His mother tells me he is a sweet child who loves his brother dearly. That was new. Naruto hadn't thought of Itachi with sweet and love. There had been none of those thoughts. Well, his mother's smile was explained by that, but his father's reaction was questionable. Naruto didn't question, though. There was nothing that was pushing him to ask. If there was something, he would eventually know. Itachi wasn't going to go anywhere, neither was he going anywhere. Speaking of younger siblings, where is Karen? Upstairs with Azumi-chan, Kushina said pleasantly. I couldn't fix dinner with her on my back. Naruto nodded. I will go check up on her, the redhead said to his parents. Naruto turned away from his parents, who were smiling behind his back. They were merely happy that he had made that choice. It has been long since he last went into the presence of his younger sister. Since her birth, he'd only seen her in a handful of times that he was with her, and over the past 3 months, there had been none of those times, and the parents had been worried that perhaps their elder child resented his younger sister. Karen wasn't in his parents' room. Naruto went to check at the other living room in the house. When he found the place, Azumi was alone, watching TV, with the child silently on her lap. Naruto-sama, Azumi said, acknowledging the redhead's presence. Have you come for Karen-chan? Naruto nodded. She is sleeping at the moment, but you can stare at her. I'm sure you have missed how she looks like, Azumi said, inviting Naruto. The redhead silently walked closer to the two. The blonde hair that just reminded him of his father, and the cute face, it was just as he remembered. His little sister, the innocent little girl who didn't know anything. She was innocent in all these. His sister was innocent. Naruto stared at Karen for a full minute before straightening himself up. All done? Naruto nodded. A cute little thing, isn't she? The redhead said in thought. He then shook his head. I better go back downstairs. You should just move in here. You hardly go home anyway. I'll consider that, Azumi said in thought. Take Karen-chan with you. Your mother wanted her to be there when you have your dinner. She said she wanted to have everyone together at the dinner table. Naruto stared at Azumi for a few moments. He hadn't held his sister since that day. Since the day his mother was allowed to leave the house. He was hesitant to do it again. It wasn't that he didn't want to. He just didn't know what to do. His sister was his sister. He didn't hate her. Sighing, Naruto spoke. Sure, why not? Azumi handed him his little sister. The movements made the baby stir up before her eyes slowly opened. He remembered those eyes, they were the same as both his parents. There was no recognition in those innocent eyes. She just stared at him. Naruto, is something wrong? Azumi asked, seeing the blank look on the redhead's face. Naruto shook his head. There was nothing wrong. He smiled warmly at the little girl in his hands. Hello, Namake's Karen, I am your older brother, Uzumaki Naruto. I hope you and I will get along when you learn to understand things around you. 2 days later. Shocked, surprised, amazed, and awed, Itachi didn't know if it was really possible to experience all emotions simultaneously, as he had a hard time trying to select the one true emotion he should express over the situation that had just occurred before his very eyes. Naruto had said that he didn't know ninjutsu because he hadn't tried learning it before. What he had been doing was learning to control his elemental chakra natures. He hadn't said which he said were his elements, but Itachi already knew there was fire due to what his father had informed him. What had surprised Itachi was that Naruto had actually executed the fireball jutsu on first time trying. The redhead had him explain to him how to expel the flames from his mouth, what was needed, and how to regulate chakra inside his system. The hand signs were caught in quickly, and then the redhead had released a fireball that was slightly bigger than his. What made it shocking was the fact that it had burned down to crisp the tree that had stood in its path. Perhaps his father had been right. The flames Naruto used were not normal flames. Naruto looked at his hands, and then looked up. As I suspected, he said to himself, showing no means of satisfaction over his perfect execution of the jutsu he'd just been taught 2 minutes ago. Itachi tilted his head to the side. What? You don't even seem excited by this. I know I was happy to learn the jutsu and execute it to the point that made my father very proud. Considering that making him feel proud is a little difficult. Anyone would be excited and take joy in this magnificent achievement. Itachi was positive that even his father would show surprise when he does tell him what the redhead had done today. The man usually showed no surprise when he told him of what Naruto had been up to. But he was sure that the man would show surprise in this one. Perhaps he would even grow much more interested in Naruto. Possibly. Naruto turned to face Itachi with a blank look on his face. For him, there was no one who would praise him for doing something so wonderful. His parents were out of the question, not because they wouldn't be happy for him, but because they didn't even know he trained himself to blood sweat and he wasn't all that too keen to tell them about how his training was going. This is the result of hard work. I'm not a genius like you. To make this a reality, I had to work hard, go through pain to achieve this. I should be excited, but, in me, there is a little voice that merely said anything less would have been a disappointment. The redhead shook his head. It is right to be excited over this. Nevertheless, this is merely what I expect of myself. You have high expectations, Itachi said. Though, he would agree that hard does pay off. And even if he was a genius, it took hard work to get where he was. He didn't simply say, I'm a genius, I can do all. No, he acknowledged that he wasn't like the others and took advantage of it to propel himself further. Yes, Naruto said. I have been learning how to control my chakra and the fire element for a long time. Itachi just raised a brow at that, but didn't question anything. The harder part with ninjutsu isn't hand seals, but manipulating the chakra inside of you. When you can effortlessly control your chakra, it is quite simple to give it form. Itachi had to sit down for this to be able to think it through. Naruto may show little interest in many things, but when it came to fighting, he was really knowledgeable. Itachi was surprised that he was even learning something from the redhead. It had been unexpected, but here he was. It was truly a surprise. The person before him was the one who literally practiced the phrase ignorance is bliss. Are you saying that when you execute ninjutsu, you're merely giving your chakra form? Naruto nodded. Yes, that is what I'm saying. To use ninjutsu, you must have chakra. I learned how to control my chakra. The second step was elemental chakra. That led to the question, what was my natural affinity? Fire was amongst the fold. And so, I learned how to convert my chakra into fire and freely control it. The third step is giving that fire a form. In your language you can simply say learning ninjutsu. Itachi stared at Naruto. That was truly a unique way to view things. Well, at least as far as the Uchiha was concerned. There could be someone who viewed things in the same light. But given that explanation, he could understand why the redhead was able to execute the jutsu that way. He already had everything that was needed to execute the jutsu. The difficulties people experience when learning jutsu stem from being unable to fully control chakra and the element in which the jutsu is based. When he learned the fireball, he hadn't done as Naruto did it. he learned to perfect it over time. The reason was simple. Although the fire was a natural affinity for Uchiha, he'd never learned to control the fire element. Why do you go about that way? Because I want to create new things. The shape that I will give to my chakra has to be different. All great shinobi have had something unique about them. I want that something as well. That was an honest response from Naruto. Really, he wanted to achieve great things in his life. He didn't want to just live in the shadow of his father. If he didn't do new things and just copied his father, he would always be associated with the shadow of the man. To step away from that shadow and simply be Uzumaki Naruto, he had to create something special to him. He had to be Uzumaki Naruto. Itachi looked up into the sky for a moment before looking back at Naruto. Perhaps father was right. Associating with you will be good for me, he said. It was evident that he would surely learn something from the redhead. It wasn't bad. Naruto acted as if he didn't hear Itachi as he sat down as well. He had things to keep to himself. He wasn't going to show Itachi everything. His clones would still do training in their secret place. Have you been approached by Danzo? Itachi raised an eyebrow, not at the question itself, but by the tone Naruto used. The redhead was speaking as if he knew that he was familiar with the Warhawk. Itachi could only assume the man had made a move on the redhead as well. Unsurprising. Yes, Itachi said. Interesting as his offer was, my father warned him against him. Do you really know what is going on? Naruto shook his head. I just know he is bad. At least that is what I was told. He went silent for a moment, thinking of what the Warhawk did that day. Never again would he be forced to feel so powerless to do something. Never again. What do you know? Why do you want to know? Because I want to know. I want to know things that I want to know, and I don't want to know what I don't want to know. Besides, that old man has been a bother. I don't have a choice but to know. Itachi shook his head. For someone who showed great knowledge in chakra and ninjutsu, this was a disappointing attitude. He does dark things that have landed him in trouble. Father says he has committed treason in more than one occasion, but the Sandaime Hokage let him go. Things are a little different with your father, though. Itachi was sure if he got associated with the Warhawk, it wouldn't paint a good picture with other clans. For now, his father was trying to build bonds based on trust with the Hokage and trying to stay away from controversial situations that would bring out questions from other clans. Danzo was bad news, and his father didn't want him, nor did he like him. Itachi had to follow that rule. Though, there was something that interested him about the man. His father was willing to admit that Danzo does love Konoha, was willing to sacrifice everything for the village. However, he was an extremist who would do anything. Even if it meant throwing the village into a civil war, he would do it as long as in the end, it freed Konoha from what he perceived to be a threat to Konoha's future success and superiority. Apparently, the man believed that Konoha should rule over other nations as the strongest. That was something that Itachi didn't agree with and would never agree with. Bad news, huh? Naruto said in thought. Naruto wasn't the one to be holding grudges and hating people as well as marking other people as enemies. But he was sure he wasn't ever going to like that man. He went to the extreme in getting what he wanted. That included using other people. Itachi nodded. Why are you trying to become powerful, Naruto? Over the past months, you have truly made a miraculous turnaround in your abilities. There has to be something driving you. What is it? Naruto cocked his side and smiled. You ask a lot of questions, Itachi, he said lightly. Is it wrong? I'm interested, and observing won't lead me to answers. It will be just speculations. I want to know. I don't believe what you said in class that day. Do you have any thoughts of becoming Hokage? Naruto continued smiling as he shrugged his shoulders carelessly. Who knows, he said. But I'm rather selfish. What I do is not for someone else, but for myself. This is not for the benefit of anyone, but for me." He paused. "I normally wouldn't bother, but since you asked, what is your reason?" "I want to bring change," Itachi said. "I want to protect this village. I want to protect my clan. I wish for the world to be a better place where there are no wars, where people aren't killing each other for meaningless reasons." Naruto blinked. He tilted his head to the other side. "That is a big load," he said. "What do they call people like you?" "Oh well. It doesn't matter much anyway. As long as you remain in Konoha and I have Konoha, we will both serve Konoha at our best of abilities." The redhead was being honest. There was no doubt he planned to give his all in the service, but it wouldn't just be for Konoha, but also for his selfish desire. Perhaps it was that thought of trying to step away from his father's shadow. If he wanted to successfully do it, he would have to outdo and surpass the feats of his father. There was no other way he could step outside that shadow. The first anniversary of the Kyuubi rampage is near. If Itachi was looking for a reaction from Naruto, he was disappointed. Naruto didn't show any emotion. His expression remained the same as he nodded. "The day that changed my life and most people's lives. You and I are in somewhat similar situations, aren't we?" It was as if the redhead had just noted it at that moment. Itachi shook his head. Naruto truly never thought of many things outside of becoming the best. That was the glaring reality. But for the good of things, Itachi was going to try to change that. "Yes," Itachi said, putting his resolve aside. He stood up and took a stance. "I wish to see how good you are." Naruto smiled, waving his hands. "I'd rather not," he said. "Let me rephrase. Today, you will show me how good you are, whether you like it or not." "Ho!" Naruto smiled, eyes closed. He folded his hands across his chest and spoke once again. "No, you can't. I can simply choose to defend until you tire out. You don't really like being forced into battle, do you?" "Who knows?" Naruto stood up. "I guess I will have to engage as a thank you for showing that jutsu earlier." "That is fair, don't you think?" "Not really, but I will take it. Sometime later." Sarutobi compound. It was a rare occasion for Naruto to be invited over to the compound for a chat with the Sandaime Hokage. Naruto had in the past met up with the retired Hokage in the Hokage Tower and at his house. The old man was nice, if Naruto could say. He didn't like old people, given his experiences with Yoshino, but the Sandaime was a different person. He was okay, smart, and someone who could talk without spewing those threats Yoshino usually throws at him or making the kind of invites that old man going by the name of Danzo usually goes by. "Ah, Naruto-kun," the Sandaime said with a smile, seeing Naruto enter the small meeting hall he was sitting within. He'd been having a meeting recently and hadn't bothered to leave the place. "So nice you could make it." Naruto returned the smile as he sat down. A conversation with the Sandaime Hokage is always a pleasant thing. There are so many things I ignore, but I have never been able to ignore the wisdom that comes off your mouth. The professor chuckled lightly, his aged eyes watching the redhead carefully, a few calculations going through at the back of his eyes. "I believe that we who are aged and experienced must always teach the young ones the right ways. But of course, just because we are old doesn't mean that we are always right. What worked in the past won't work now. The world is forever evolving." That is a little too deep for me. Naruto wasn't ashamed to say that out loud. He really didn't have time to have such thoughts. He was still just a kid. He should be allowed to ignore everything else and focus on just one thing. The god of shinobi stared curiously. "What do you mean that is a little too deep for you, Naruto-kun?" He already had an idea. He wasn't staying oblivious to the things that occurred around the village, especially with the future generation. Someone like Naruto was a person of interest. When the Sandaime had looked at the eyes of the redhead just after he was born, he'd looked into the eyes of someone who would become something else in the future. There was the potential to become a name that would be spoken about in all corners of the elemental nations. But for that to happen, the redhead had to stop some of his tendencies. He knew because he kept an eye on things. "I don't go that far," Naruto said, before putting on a thoughtful look on his face. Perhaps it was his blatant ignorance that made him stop going far and learning things about life. Itachi would surely get along with those kinds of thoughts. He was a deep thinker as well. "Why? There is no need for me to go that far. At least I don't see the need. I know what I have to know, what is useful for me now. Tomorrow things will be known tomorrow when the time is right for me to know." The Sandaime Hokage shook his head. "Things don't work in that way, Naruto-kun. Why do you train so hard? It isn't for today, but for tomorrow. If you go with the thought that you will know what is needed tomorrow, on that day, shouldn't you say you will train to become strong tomorrow because it is when you're devolved that you wish to be strong?" Naruto tilted his head to the side, always the challenging talker. This kind of talk made his head ache. Naruto massaged his head, trying to calm his thoughts. He was being forced to think deeper. He really didn't want to. Power and knowledge are different things. I have come to understand that power isn't something that you gain on the spot. It takes time to grow. That is why I have no expectations now, but in the near future, expectations will be there, the redhead explained calmly. "You're correct about that, but that is the same with knowledge. You're preparing for the future by training your body to be able to withstand and do what you wish for it. When you don't know anything, you remain blind. Knowing now helps you deal with things differently and you can come out on top. Say, for example, if you'd known about Itachi, you wouldn't have agreed to engage him. But because you didn't know about him, you suffered that experience. Yes, suffering that experience may have helped you, but had you known, you would have avoided it. Some troubles are avoided by knowing. When you don't know, you easily fall into traps. Sometimes you will make it, but it isn't always that you will be lucky." Naruto tilted his head to the side, closed his eyes. If he hadn't been warned against Danzo, he would have possibly agreed to follow the man when he realized that the academy wasn't going to make it work for him. But because he knew, he avoided the trap that would lead him to darkness. "That makes sense," Naruto said, seeing the logic in what the third was saying. "I've never looked at it in that way," he added. Still, the back of his head still sung ignorance is bliss. The Sandaime Hokage nodded. "Of course it does," he said confidently. "You have experienced situations that have worked better because you knew. You cannot pass an exam if you do not know. This is why you must study. Life presents many challenges. When you ignore knowledge, you will not be able to face those challenges. Like during an exam, if you refuse the knowledge and don't study, you will fail." Despite being himself, Naruto nodded, listening carefully to the Sandaime's wisdom. He usually ignored other people, but the old man was speaking sense any rational mind couldn't just ignore. He wanted to be great, perhaps that was need for that as well. "Well, they do not call you the professor for nothing," Naruto said with a smile. "You can also be called by your own title, Naruto," the Sandaime a bit strongly. "You have the chance, resources, and energy to do so. My knowledge and the wisdom to apply it made me what I was in my prime. Power is great, but power and wisdom make you a legend." Naruto's smile widened. If the Sandaime could see the eyes of the redhead, he would have known he hit the spot. A legend was greater than a hero. Minato was just a hero. He could become a hero and a living legend. Perhaps he just didn't know the difference, but the Sandaime's words poked something inside his head. Naruto wasn't going to be satisfied with being great, he wanted to be a legend. Then he wouldn't be stuck behind anyone's shadow. Coming here hadn't been the wrong choice, and his association with Itachi will surely benefit him. Knowledge is vital. Even little things can prove to be important in a situation you never expected, the third continued. Naruto nodded. I'll keep that in mind, Sandaime-sama, the redhead said respectfully. The old man was amused. But he didn't let drive away his thoughts. I hear you have been doing rather well in the academy. When I look at your file, I can't help but be impressed. Academy standards are nothing to be impressed about, Naruto said with a wave of his right hand. Oh? The Sandaime had a look on his face. Naruto may not have said it, but he had just revealed that there was more to his skills than what he showed in the academy. The old man really didn't know what Naruto could do. The redhead protected his training from all eyes. Even the all-seeing Byakugan couldn't see through the shield he'd erected around himself. Then I can expect great things from you when you become a shinobi. Naturally, Naruto said. Anything less would be a disappointment. The third smiled. Then I hope to be alive to see you reach your prime. He was sure he wouldn't have to wait too long with the situation outside the village. One wrong move from someone, and a war would be sparked. The Sandaime was sure of it. It made him frown to know that even this current generation wouldn't be spared from the horrors of war. They'd just gotten over the Third Shinobi World War. Another one wasn't welcomed, but as things stood, blood would be shed once again. You will. The Sandaime nodded and then adopted a slightly serious expression on his face. How are things at home? His tone was cautious, yet the curiosity was clearly audible and visible in his eyes. Naruto put on his mask as he responded, fine, was all he could say. Heard something? The third shook his head. Not recently, he said. I hope things are well. In any case, let us get to the main reason I called you here. Naruto just nodded with his usual smile. Your parents haven't told you this. Your generation doesn't really know anything about what is going on outside the walls of Konoha. Uchiha Itachi, you've been spending time with him, yes? Naruto nodded, and so the third continued. His father doesn't shield him from the reality of things occurring within and outside of Konoha. I know you're still young, but you must know. Must know, huh? Naruto thought. He had that saying, he knew what he must know. At this rate, you're going to be a shinobi soon. The Sandaime fell short of saying that by end year both Naruto and Itachi would no longer be fit for the academy. Itachi would go, but the Sandaime was sure Minato wouldn't want his son to be a shinobi at such a young age. He would have little options, though. The rest of the villagers and shinobi looked up to the Hokage. If something happened now, Minato would have to act. How were parents going to send their children into battle if the Hokage couldn't send his own son? That was the unfortunate situation Naruto found himself in. And this was why the third was taking his time to prepare the boy mentally. When you do, you will realize that things are difficult out there. Both Kumo and Iwagakure are intimidating our shinobi. We can no longer send anyone below the Jonin rank outside the borders of the Fire Country. Some have gone and have not returned, and because we don't have proof over anything, we can't do anything, the Sandaime Hokage said. Naruto closed his eyes. Kumo and Iwagakure? Where did he hear about those two villages? Oh, yes, they were two great shinobi villages, each with two Jinchurikis. Ah, that was troublesome. Although not getting the full picture, Naruto acted as if he did. Things are that difficult, huh? The Sandaime nodded. There is also something that affects you directly. During the Third Shinobi World War, your father made a lot of enemies. This village loved you. Imagine a whole village out to get you as passionate as Konoha was in loving you. That was a clear enough picture for Naruto to understand. He knew that his life would be in danger if went outside the village, and yet he merely put on his mask. I see, he said. Then all the more reasons to train harder, the redhead said, smiling. If the Sandaime said he wasn't a bit unnerved, he would be lying. Even with what he just said, the redhead was still smiling. Later, Minato put on a smile when he saw the Sandaime Hokage enter his office. It was always pleasant to have the old man in his office to talk things out. He really did learn a lot from the retired Hokage. Even when busy, he would make time for the old man. Nobody understood the demands of the job better than the old man anyway. Sandaime-sama, Minato greeted the old man with a smile on his face. "I wasn't expecting to see you today," he added. Really, the old man usually sent a message beforehand so that he could make the time to talk with him. "This just came in," the Sandaime said, smiling as he sat down. "Oh, something wrong?" Minato asked, his expression turning into a lightly serious one. The tone of the Sandaime had some serious urges in it. That made Minato's focus turn up to the old man completely. "I had a talk with Naruto-kun earlier," the Sandaime said quietly. "It was interesting to say the least. I didn't get much of what happens inside his head, but I got the idea. In any case, have you been aware that he has started training with Itachi?" Minato nodded. "Yes," he said. "I'm aware of that. He told me the day they started doing when I asked. Is there something wrong?" The Sandaime shook his head. "It's actually a good thing. Naruto isn't dedicated to the greater things as Itachi. To this village, I mean. I have spoken to young Itachi, and he will become a truly valuable shinobi of Konoha, so will Naruto. But the two are different, and I think that Itachi will be a good influence on your son." Minato was silent for a few moments. Despite everything the village gave to Naruto, he doesn't quite love it as most people. His goal is something personal. The Sandaime nodded. "That may be true, but it will benefit Konoha greatly. I can assure you of that. Both Naruto and Itachi will become Konoha's greats." The old man managed to smile at that. He wiped it off a second later, though. "Danzo is making a move on Naruto." Minato frowned. "He just won't quit." "Yes, but he can be managed. I will not allow him to turn both Naruto and Itachi into his side. I will deal with him," the Sandaime said firmly. "Leave him to me, and you handle the issues surrounding our village. The situation isn't becoming any favorable." "I will trust you on that," Minato said. "By that, I can assume he has made a move on Itachi as well," the third nodded. "Fugaku won't be pleased by that. He is very protective of his son getting outside influences." "Yes, what about Naruto?" Minato frowned. "I offered him my help, but he hasn't asked me a damn thing. He has asked his mother about the use of chakra chains and some things about barriers, but nothing from me." "Don't let it bother you too much, Minato-kun," the Sandaime said calmly. "It's not that Naruto doesn't want your help. It is that he doesn't want to be like you. Naruto has been living in your shadow for all his short life. He probably doesn't want to end up learning things from you, as that would still leave him in your shadow. What Naruto wants to do is surpass you on his own. He wants to be greater than you. Take heart in that. My own son had no desire to be greater than I am. But your son respects your skills and wishes to surpass all that. You should be happy. But I want to help him." It made him happy that his son wanted to surpass him, but he still wanted to be part of that growth and development. "I know. But at this stage, you can only give him support and give him some pointers. If you speak to him, he will listen to you," the Sandaime said. "There are some people that Naruto doesn't listen to, but despite everything, you're still his father and he will listen to you if you try to speak to him." "I will try that," Minato said with a smile. "Before I forget. Well, it is the reason I came here. I informed Naruto of what has been going on around the elemental nations. You know things better than anyone close to him, so he will eventually come to you to inquire since he doesn't know most things because of his ignorance." Minato didn't seem happy about that. "Kushina won't be pleased." "It's all right," the Sandaime said with a wave of his right hand. "It won't change anything in young Naruto. It will only influence him to stop being ignorant and continue training hard. How did he take it? The Sandaime Hokage frowned. With a smile. Uzumaki Library. Azumi stared at Naruto with surprise written all over her face. She was truly surprised to see Naruto behind a desk, while reading material that wouldn't help him with his training, with a bored look on his face. The redhead almost exclusively read things would have helped with his training or the things that would lead him to get good grades at the academy. Nothing else much had mattered in his eyes aside from those valuables. Training was his life, so he didn't care much about anything else. Perhaps the thing that surprised her most was the bored look he had. If it was boring, why was he even going through it? Normally, when Naruto found something boring, he didn't bother go through it. He said he wasn't a masochist to make himself suffer in that way, yet he was doing something along those lines. "You're looking into the history of our clan?" Azumi asked, seeing the redhead with the book before him. "You know, if you'd paid attention when I was teaching you these things, you wouldn't be going through them now." "I didn't want to know back then," Naruto simply said. "But it has become apparent that this clan will remain part of my life whether I like it or not. I will have to know everything that I need to know as heir of the Uzumaki clan." "What brought this up?" "People never stop learning. I'm no different. I'll still ignore some things, but this is something that I must know." The Sandaime Hokage did say something that brightened my vision. The redhead looked up at Azumi for a moment before looking back at his books. "The history is rather long, but nothing much entertaining like with the Uchihas and the Senju." Azumi shook her head. "We have always been peaceful and refrained from fighting," she said. "Of course we won't have a history like those two clans." "You don't really want being clan head, do you?" Naruto was silent for a few moments. "I don't really know," he said. "Itachi has his clear dreams. He loves this village, his clan, and will eventually take the position of clan head from his father, and he will do so not for himself, but what he desires to protect and for his love." "You want to be like that?" Naruto snorted. "I'm me. We all can't wish for the same things. I guess Uzumaki will always remain by my side, but I have no desire to be like him." "The true dream will not change," the redhead said firmly. "Being head clan will represent freedom for me and will elevate my status. It is all selfish desires for me. Nevertheless, I still believe the clan must be taken care of. There is really no one who can do that aside from me." Azumi nodded. "Then are you going to take your role seriously? Have you just met me?" Naruto asked the redhead with a blank look on his face. "My dream will come first before anything, and I will still ignore what I don't need. Responsibilities pushed onto me are a chore. I will handle those kinds of things when the time comes. For now, let me be a kid." Azumi shook her head. He wanted to be a kid when it was convenient for him. Being Uzumaki Naruto was surely fun. Well, she was his guardian, and even if he does grow old, she would always be by his side. No matter what. This was a job that she'd taken for life. "Your mother was asking about you." "My mother is always asking about me," Naruto merely said with a shrug. "What did she want?" "Her son? I'm available once a week. That is enough for me." "I don't really have the time," Naruto said. Really, things were just awkward between him and his parents. They could never return to the past glory. Naruto had changed. He was no longer that person. He was someone with dreams now, and he wouldn't stop until he achieved them. "Is it really that uncomfortable for you?" "I just don't know how to act around them." "They are trying, I understand that. But things cannot return to the way they were. They have to accept that, or else their attempts would someday become an annoyance that would drive him out of the Uzumaki compound. Yoshino would no doubt try to have his head if he did something like that. Then again, Naruto wouldn't care. If he does become a shinobi soon, he would be able to afford his own living. He wouldn't require the support of his parents. He would try that, just to feel the freedom of being independent. They will eventually, Azumi said. With what she had to say, Azumi chose to be quiet when going about it. Yoshino wants to see how far you have progressed in Fuinjutsu. She said you have to meet her by tomorrow evening. Naruto frowned. That will not work, he said. I really don't have the time to listen to her brutality. The old hag can wait for me for all she likes, but I will not see her. I'm capable of avoiding her. What will happen the day she catches you? I will deal with it then. For now, you didn't say anything, the redhead said calmly. As long as she doesn't know where I am, she won't find me. And given how things are, she won't go to my mother to ask about it. Mother would probably offer her some choice of words. You may be on the safe side, but I will still have to face her. You don't have to listen to her. She isn't your boss or anything. I'm your master. She can go back to Yuzu for all I care, Naruto said a bit loud. He then calmed himself before speaking once again. Was there anything else? No, Azumi said with a shake of her head. It was just the message. Forest of Death. Naruto ducked under a swinging kick from Itachi and then moved back slightly to create some distance between him and the Uchiha. As soon as he touched down, Itachi attacked him once again, this time high kick aimed at his face. Naruto placed his hands in a cross position to block the kick. His defense was strong enough to shield himself from the kick. As Itachi jumped back, Naruto took out a kunai and threw it towards the Uchiha's forehead. Itachi intercepted the projectile with his own. He threw a kunai that hit Naruto's. It had been angled just enough to deflect it from his trajectory. They'd been doing things for a couple of minutes, Itachi attacking head-on and Naruto playing the defensive guy. For the past week, the redhead had rarely attacked him. He wasn't giving away anything. It was always on the defense and only attacking when there was a clear opening. If it was chess, one could say the redhead only moved his pieces in places he knew they couldn't be taken out. He didn't do risky moves. But it was okay. That had been the agreement. Itachi wasn't complaining because he was never actually able to bypass the redhead's defense. Naruto had a solid defense, but in terms of attacking, he had little, as far as Itachi could tell anyway. Regardless, this was something of a challenge. He helped Naruto improve his defenses, and Naruto helped him see how his attacks left him open. It was also a good puzzle trying to figure out how to attack someone who was going to instinctively respond to everything he throws at him. Shall we end here? That is fine, Naruto said calmly. This way of fighting, there was no winner, no loser. Naruto had admitted that even though this was just sparring, he would hate to lose, and so he removed all the strings that would bind for there to be a winner and a loser. It was apparent that the redhead didn't like losing at all. He had a winner's DNA, but wasn't the kind to pull all dirty tricks to win. Although he hated losing, he didn't engage in anything he would lose. He only engaged when he was confident he would win or when he had no other choice but to engage. A draw was also acceptable. There was also a thing such as a technical retreat. You're not going to be easy to defeat, Itachi said with his thoughts at the tip of his tongue. Not just because of your defense, but because you won't be the shinobi who will blindingly engage into battle without knowing much about his enemies. When you're sure you can't win, you don't test things. That old hag in the Uzumaki compound might call it being a coward, but I call it the smart way. When you don't know when you're beat, you die young as a shinobi. We must all know our limits, how far we can go, and how long we can push. That is essential for any shinobi. When we don't know our limits, we tend to overestimate ourselves, Itachi said. Truly, Naruto may not claim to be a genius with fighting, but truly was. It was always thinking before an action when it came to battle. Have you actually spent more time training in your offensive capabilities? Naruto shook his head. I've been working on creating a perfect defense. My rule is that before you attack, you must be able to defend. The redhead looked up into the sky. Itachi, you returned into this good person because of what you saw during the Third Shinobi World War. I didn't see anything because my father didn't take me to the battlefield. However, when the Kyuubi went on a rampage, I saw everything. My parents, that senile old hag, and my father's personal guards, they were away from the clan's compound. In my house, I was alone. I went out when the Kyuubi went on a rampage. I saw everything. I don't know if I was scared or not. But I saw people being swatted like they were flies, a mountain that couldn't be cut down no matter what was thrown at it. Itachi frowned. This wasn't something good. Even though Naruto was saying that, there was no emotion on his tone. He was sure even his expression was just a blank mask. That worried Itachi, perhaps even more so because it would confirm his suspicions. Even with all that I saw, there has never been a day I had a nightmare because of it. That should have been an event that changed my life. Perhaps it did, and I've just been unconscious of it. Naruto shook his head, opting not to continue. Anyone would have been changed. Hell, even the older generation still had the nightmares of that day. But for Naruto to have watched everything and yet have a peaceful sleep, that was worrying. It said much about the redhead's emotional state. Perhaps he felt nothing because he'd been too young to understand what was really going. At that point, Naruto was pretty much a naive, spoiled brat who only knew happiness. It was possible. But now that he understood everything, should it not give his heart a burden? People are different. Everyone is unique. Our perception of things is different depending on what we value. That is something new, Naruto said more to himself than to Itachi. I have never been the one to think too deeply about the future. I didn't consider things like what was right or wrong, the moral responsibility. My focus was simply with training. But the conversations I have been having have led me to discover that there is more to life than just training. This was something new to Itachi. Not the words themselves, but the fact that Naruto was saying it. The redhead had at times looked careless about the things that were around. Perhaps it had something to do with his ignorance. Still, Itachi didn't think that part would be changing anytime soon. He figured that was a part that defined who the redhead was. Well, our age group isn't focused on that, Itachi said. It is about playing and having fun. He didn't have that time though. There was something that he had seen. Something he had to change. I had my fun. I had the time many would wish they could have. It was fun, Naruto said with a smile. Perhaps now is the time to grow. I wish I had remained ignorant of it though. Knowing is making life troublesome. Itachi knew what the redhead was talking about. Would you rather be like those in our class? Naruto nodded. They are basking in their ignorance. Who can blame them? They don't know anything. The bliss of being ignorant, the redhead said lightly. Well, this situation was just ideal for him. It would make it possible for him to start his journey quickly. He wouldn't need to spend a decade fighting for people to know his name. Itachi shook his head. Just be careful that ignorance doesn't become your downfall, the Uchiha said. What is that you wanted to tell me? Preforming ninjutsu, why do we weave hand sings before performing a jutsu? Some experienced shinobi are able to do jutsu without the use of hand signs. I have said this, chakra, excellent control over it and the imagination to give shape to the chakra is what I need to do ninjutsu. The Nidaime Hokage was perfect when it came to Suiton Jutsu. For many of them, he didn't need to weave hand signs. Why was that? Because of his high control over the element. If controlling an element becomes as easy as moving your hand, then there will be no need to waste time performing hand signs. Naruto paused for a moment. It may take time, but I want to make this a reality. Naruto surprised him once again. He shook his head. He shouldn't be. When it came to ninjutsu, the redhead had shown to be knowledgeable. Perhaps this was what he must know. He had a certain way on going over with ninjutsu. It was a way that worked. How good is your control over your chakra? Perfect, Naruto said simply. With the amount of time I have spent on learning it, anything less would be disappointing. Perfect control over chakra makes it easy to learn ninjutsu. You won't have troubles trying to figure out the right amount of chakra needed to perform certain jutsus. With good enough control you can do it, Itachi countered. But I do see your point. Fire is my natural affinity. So learning fire-based jutsus is quite easy for me. Although he wasn't going to say it aloud, it was much simpler for the redhead given his control over the element. The fireball is truly an easy jutsu to do. Its method is simple: knead chakra inside of your body, turning it into flames, and then release the flames as if breathing out, Naruto said, holding a single hand seal. Going through many hand seals is a waste of time. One is only necessary for activation. Saying that, Naruto exhaled a small fireball from his mouth. It may have been small, but the heat produced by the flames was by no means small. Itachi just shook his head. At this level, he couldn't perform that jutsu with just a single hand sign. Naruto was truly going to be amazing when he grew up. Then again, he still had the Sharingan. There was so much unlimited potential up for grabs. If they became partners, they would be a force to be reckoned with and the proud protectors of the hidden leaf. As you can see, it still needs work, but within a couple of days, it should be perfect, Naruto said with a frown. The frown was for his disappointing try for a one-hand jutsu he deemed as simple. Itachi nodded. It wasn't good as the one he did with hand signs, but still something nonetheless. My father wants to speak with you, the Uchiha said a bit cautiously. You don't have to see him anytime soon or feel forced to do it. You can do it at any time you choose. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto said, walking away from the Uchiha. I have other matters to attend to. Itachi just shook his head. Well, he got the message through. The redhead may have acted as if he didn't hear him, but Itachi was sure Naruto had heard him. The day would come. For now, Naruto just had no interest in talking to his father. Perhaps he needed time to think about it and look into his father before meeting him. Oh well, the day had been productive. He had no complaints. The redhead was surely going to train some more in this hidden training ground. If Naruto was going to get more work done, it was best he did so. He didn't want to be left behind by someone he'd beaten without even trying less than a year ago. You've made quite the friend there, Shisui said, sitting atop of a tree branch. We're not exactly friends, but training acquaintances. Itachi corrected. Well, he did hope they would become friends soon. All that was needed was time. How long have you been here? Long enough, Shisui responded calmly. I know the Yondaime Hokage. He is nothing like him, in personality at least. But then again, that seems to be the purpose, isn't it? Itachi just nodded. How are things out there? He asked Shisui, knowing the older Uchiha was already a shinobi. So, he knew about what was happening around the shinobi world better than he did. Shisui looked up to the leaves that obstructed his view of the sky. This village needs to be protected by those willing to sacrifice everything. Itachi, when you step into the shinobi world, you will have to give you everything in order to protect the village that we love. Is it really that bad? Not yet, but it will soon enough, Shisui said quietly. Introduce me to Naruto one day. He is the son of the Hokage. Whether he likes it or not, he will be thrown into the fray, and the Sandaime has entrusted me with a mission. Itachi looked curiously at his friend, wondering what his friend was talking about. A mission from the Sandaime Hokage? It had to be something important. By the looks of things, everyone was making a move on Naruto. His future, present and actions will mean a lot. Seeing the look Itachi had on his face, Shisui merely smiled. Don't worry about. It is nothing dangerous, he paused, landing down the ground. You know it better, Naruto isn't quite like us. He doesn't have the kind to make sacrifices and make selfless decisions. The Sandaime wants us to work on that. Later. Uchiha Compound. It was truly an interesting development that Minato would give him permission to make a move on Naruto, so long as he helped his son get better. Perhaps the Yondaime Hokage, despite his firm belief that things couldn't get worse, was beginning to take things seriously in order to prepare his son for the tomorrow that waited for him. Of course, Fugaku had been more than happy to take Minato's blessing. He wasn't planning on poisoning the boy against his father. He had no such plans. Given what he had learned about the redhead, he figured even manipulating him wouldn't be an easy task, not that he had those plans. He just wanted someone who would become a valuable partner to the Uchiha and secure their future inside the Hidden Leaf. Their future was here, and nowhere else. Father, Uchiha Fugaku was taken out of his thoughts when Itachi walked into his study. Itachi, the Uchiha head, acknowledged his son's presence. You're back a bit late today. Had too many things to do at the training ground today? Itachi nodded. I had a session with Naruto and then one with Shisui, the black-haired said as he sat down in front of his father's desk. Fugaku nodded. Ah, he truly was blessed to have both Shisui and Itachi in his clan. It was especially wonderful when Shisui was excelling so tremendously that the Sandaime Hokage even took interest in him. Itachi wasn't the only one loved by the villagers, but Shisui as well. If he could have Naruto as well, how things could turn up for the Uchiha. Yes, things would be smooth for the clan. How was young Naruto? He is simply amazing, father. Even Shisui was impressed by him. His understanding and control over both chakra and the fire element is exceptional, Itachi said. He sounded a bit happy. You will have to see him to believe it yourself. When will that happen? I spoke to him. It is only a matter of time, Itachi said to his father. Fugaku allowed a smile to grace his lips. That was good news. Do you have something you want to tell or ask me, Itachi? He asked, seeing the look his son was giving him. Itachi nodded. He didn't know if there was an easy way to go about it, and so he just went with it. Shisui told me that we may have a war soon. Fugaku frowned. The older Uchiha hadn't been wrong to inform Itachi about it. It was the truth. He knew it too well. He was always in communication with the Yondaime Hokage after all. That is what it looks like. We've just had a war recently. People are still recovering from the losses. I don't think any village will be too keen to enter into one. However, anything is possible. Itachi wanted to know what was causing the problems. He couldn't really understand why the nations would want to engage in another war. He'd seen one. He didn't want to see another one. Why is it, father? Perhaps they are nervous. Konoha called things to a halt with the Wagakure because both villages had suffered massive losses. If it hadn't been for Minato, I doubt a Wagakure would have agreed to a truce, Fugaku explained calmly. Since then, Konoha suffered more losses because of the Kyuubi incident. Perhaps they even smelled blood. But the village remains strong, the Uchiha still stand firm, and we have the Uzumaki. Itachi tilted his head to the side. With the destruction of their home village and many of them dead, there's just a few of them. Why do they still fear them? Vengeance possibly, Fugaku said. They were attacked simply because of their power. They hadn't provoked anyone. Numbers don't matter, son. The Uzumaki Sealing Corps is made of just 4 members. Yet, if they so wished, they could disable all barriers put as security in any village, and they could disable all bijus. No one in this village was able to even harm the Kyuubi. Our attacks couldn't do anything against it. But do you know what? Naruto's mother held the bijou at bay. She kept it from moving and creating a barrier so powerful even a beast that could flatten this village in a minute couldn't escape from. The credit goes to Minato, but that woman stopped things. Itachi, you must understand that before that, Kushina had survived the Kyuubi's extraction and had just given birth. Perhaps you don't know. But if it had been me who had the Kyuubi extracted from, I would have died at the scene. Itachi absorbed it all silently. When he had fully digested what his father had told him, he opened his mouth to speak. She must be a great kunoichi. She was, Fugaku said. Do you understand what could become of Naruto if you combine his Uzumaki specialties and what he is currently doing? The following morning, Yoshino had woken up early and made her way towards the compound's gates waiting for Naruto to make his way towards the academy. There was no other way to leave the compound aside the gate. She had made sure of that, and Naruto was too young to have learned Shunshin to teleport away from the compound. There was also a concrete report that he made his way out around this time heading towards the academy. She didn't have to wait for too long as the redhead came into view with his hands inside his pockets. She waited patiently until he reached her before glaring at him sternly. I know that useless girl gave you my message and you chose not to oblige, the old woman said sternly. Naruto opted to just look at the woman impassively. It was possible that he hadn't heard her because he was busy trying to figure how he was going to get out of this one. It was really a tricky situation and he needed to find a good way to get out of it. Really, he hadn't thought the old hag would be willing to wait for him at the gate just so he could follow through to her demands. Are you listening to me? He really didn't want to end up being forced off to the training ground to bear with her. Naruto would rather suffer the torment of the academy rather than be in the presence of the old woman. She was a man. Naruto was abruptly cut off from his thoughts when a chakra chain sped towards his forehead. The redhead did just enough to dodge the chain. That had been close. If it had hit him, he would have disappeared in a puff of smoke. The young Uzumaki tilted his head to the side as he put on his smile, eyes closed. Good morning, Oba-san, he said happily.